sometimes struggle to get up in the morning or wind down for bed at night? I used to find it so difficult. I woke up with no sense of positivity and brightness. I was void of motivation and spirit. This changed completely when I started waking up with a Lumi body clock. These incredible devices mimic the light and colour of a real sunrise and sunset, transforming the experience of waking up and going to sleep completely. Rather than being suddenly woken up with an alarm clock, the Lumi body clock will wake you up gradually with a natural sunrise. The Lumi body clock has been shown to improve the quality of sleep and awakening and to boost mood and productivity in clinical trials. You can personalise your sunrise and sunset from 15 to 90 minutes with their clinically tested unique natural light and more than 20 sleep and wake sounds. We all deserve to sleep well and to wake up feeling fresh. So if you're finding this a challenge and you want to try a new approach, go to lumi.com.
What do you make of the term yacht rock?
It sounds a little Hollywood because it seems like some billionaire's out on his boat and he's probably in his 60s, late 50s, mid 50s possibly, and he's playing the music of my era, you know. And to me, it's a little awkward, but at the same time, it's cool because I understand what the name means. It's musical. Our era was musical, very musical. I mean, a lot, you know, major league chord changes, so much melodic input, and that's gone. It went away with our era.
Yeah. Do you think when you hear modern music, do you ever hear anything that knocks you out?
Charlie Puth is good.
Charlie Puth?
Yeah. He can make some musical records. So back to Yacht Rock. So
you think Charlie Puth is an example of a musician at the moment who's really good at musical?
His jazz chops seem to show up every once in a while. You can tell he's very melodic. Now, if Jacob Collier starts pulling hits, it will be musical. I don't think he can, for lack of a better term, dumb himself down too much. I know I can't.
Well, I mean, you couldn't dumb yourself down, but you could definitely pull together those complicated chords to create pop records that people could enjoy.
You know, I just really wish that music would get back to where it was. Let's take a look at every era for a second. In 1877 is when the first Edison recorder came out. I don't really know much about the music from that era, but I know in the early 1900s, Robert Johnson, the blues guy, you know, and he was an excellent player, and he was the cat that opened the door for what became R&B and blues. And he was the first guy, as far as we know, because there was nobody else recorded, right? Okay, that was good stuff. He could play well. Then we get into the 20s, and they're starting to form jazz-ish kind of stuff. Then we get into the 30s, and now jazz is really starting to come together. But there's commercial music too, you know, the Gershwin brothers, I don't know when they came along, and Cole Porter. Musicals had really good music in it. Some of those songs even today just blow me away. And that kept going up till about the 70s. Rodgers and Hart were the last two guys that blew me away, you know, writing songs like My Funny Valentine, that were in the play Pal Joey, that were in the movie with Frank Sinatra and Cam Novak. Okay, so backing up a little bit, we've got jazz in the 30s, then we have jazz in the 40s where it's grown. This is a big peak in the musical bump. Big peak. Sinatra's happening at the same time. Very good in-tune singer. Ella, the best female singer of all time, Ella Fitzgerald. She's from the 30s and then really developed in the 40s. And then the 50s come. Now in the 50s, here comes the change slowly. The very first rock record I can remember is Bill Haley and the Comets, Rock Around the Clock.
Yeah.
And
when was that, 1951?
I think 53. I think Ike Turner actually maybe had the first R&B hit.
What about Fats Domino?
You can count Fats too. And you can count Little Richard. And Little Richard was a big influence in the Beatles, as we know. And so was James Brown. Now, I'm getting off into another thing here. We'll come back to that in a minute because that's incredible stuff, too. So we have the big bump in jazz in the 40s. Now we get to the 50s, and the guys from the 40s are like Sinatra. He makes it over into the 50s, no problem, and does well, and starts making albums that are really musically good. Jazz, but pop. And Nelson Riddle was his arranger, and it was excellent stuff, man. And then, of course, we have Bill Haley, and then we have Elvis Presley. So there's these two different things going on. One of them still music, high IQ. And the other one is like this rock thing, and it's okay. You know, Elvis is okay. The Bill Haley thing, and the other guy's okay. But then with Little Richard and Fats Domino, and Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. This guy was a great singer. He died really young. Drugs, the whole bit. So we have the Sinatra thing staying here. But now guys like Fats Domino, Little Richard, and James Brown, when I hear James Brown, it's going up here for me. Because this is the first time music's really grooving in Funkland. I mean, the best of the best. Now we get into the 60s. Sinatra's barely hanging on. James Brown's doing well. Little Richard's doing well. But now we have some of these bands that are starting to happen, other than the Beatles. Now, look, man, everybody that I know, even jazzers, all grew up with the Beatles, a lot of them. And even if they didn't, they all respect it because it's quality songwriting, man. And these cats were talented. And just the amount of material, the massive amount of material they came up with in such a short time, and always good and creative. The Beatles is a whole other story. Yeah, so here we are in the 60s. You still got Sinatra. You still have jazz. Jazz in the 50s was burning too. So we're musically at a good high point. Rock and roll comes in with Bill Haley and the Comets. We get to Little Richard and we get to James Brown, and it's actually going above the Sinatra stuff for me. But Ella, when I hear Ella, she's still way up here. Sarah Vaughan, they're way up here, man. Okay, now we get into the 60s a little farther. And we get into, well, the Doors were in the late 60s, right? Stuff like that to me was like, material. Man.
Really? Yeah.
Man, nobody saw him musically, man. To me. Now, but I'm a jazz snob. I mean, I'm a pop chord changes snob. I can't help it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to agree with you for the sake of it, but like, I see what the vibe is about with those records, but the singing's just a bit shit, for want of a better word. I'm sure
exactly.
He's a very iconic guy, Jim Morrison.
Right.
But yeah, the singing.
I agree.
It's
man.
not John Lennon, even, or like, you know, if you're talking about voices that aren't like Ella Fitzgerald and their character for.
And right, even Sinatra, man, it was.
Well, yeah, quite.
That
always has notes that are being precisely hit.
Right, and if he sang a little out of tune, he'd always grease into it. There was Bobby Darin, who was an overlooked guy because he died very young of a rare brain disease. Very sad. I mean, he really sang in tune. All these people had to sing in tune back then. And we're going to get to a thing with autotune in a minute you're going to love. But anyway, so let's look at the era. So here we are in the 50s. Sinatra, Ella, great. Bill Haley, and all the stuff getting up here. James Brown, Little Richard, the Fats Domino, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. And there's a bunch of others. Then Motown comes in. Quality as well. Most of it's really quality stuff, especially Marvin Gaye. But Smokey, Stevie Wonder, my favorite of all time. He's the one that changed my life in the 70s. I'll get to that in a minute. But there's these bands like the Doors and these other groups, and of course, I think the singers had the chick appeal, which made them more successful, because I don't think a lot of guys were into that, but actually I don't know. As a musician, I know I wasn't, And no offense to the guys in the band, it was the singing that bothered me. The actual lick on Light My Fire, the keyboard lick, is a well thought out line. And they're the nice chord changes, and I cycle a fifth. No, it's not totally a cycle of fifths. Anyway, But then we come up to the 70s, and there's still a lot of these. Oh, the Rolling Stones. Let me get back to the Rolling Stones. They're like an average garage band to me. I'm not a Mick Jagger fan. I don't care about his moves and all that. You know, I mean, they had a couple of good songs. What's the lick? The Keith Richards lick. Let's see. What's the name of that
Tumbling
song?
Dice.
What is it?
Tumbling Dice.
Is that the Stones?
Yeah.
Okay. That tune I liked.
I love that song.
Right.
That's my favourite Stones song.
That's my only favorite.
That's from that
song.
album that I was just talking about, Exile on Main Street. That is way better than all the other Stones albums.
To me, when I heard that tune, I go, now these cats are doing something that's a little more musical.
I reckon you'd like the whole album of Exile.
I'll check it out.
That is a really good album. Loads of really good kind of gospel singers, and the songwriting's better, and the chords are more satisfying, and it's a bit more kind of similar to that sort of melodic stuff.
It was more.
Really like.
It definitely was. Okay, I'm getting off track here.
The Stones and the Doors, you weren't a fan of.
No, I wasn't. And there were some other bands that wasn't what I was. But I'm playing these songs in clubs. But the good news was that I got to play. I became the white guitarist that the Black Cats wanted to hire. Because on account of James Brown, I learned to play funk, man. I learned where that pocket was. And when, I was the only white guy a lot of times in really dangerous parts of LA, and there was never a problem. Because as soon as you hear the white boy play guitar, if he can play funky, he's cool. And they know it right away, whether they're musicians or not. Is this guy in the pocket or not? So that was the music I was playing mostly in clubs, man, and I was loving it. And Latin music, too. All of this stuff was setting me up to be a studio guitarist, too. Because I'm playing all the different types of music. And plus, of course, all the pop stuff on the radio when I had to on the six-nighter gigs. But, so musically, the Beatles came along in the 60s. Blood, Sweat, and Tears came along in the late 60s. That would be the first yacht rock band. That would be the first one. They got away with jazz stuff, too.
Okay.
Like on Spinning Wheel, on the single, they pulled the trumpet solo out. It's a jazz solo. And for the single, they cut it out. Chicago would have been the next. Whoever first gets the vote for being that, right? Okay, the bands that are in that genre. In Japan, David Foster and I made an album in 1979, and David and I don't take full credit for this, but we were known as the beginning of West Coast pop. And that traveled along with us, but if you're going to call us West Coast pop, you have to call Toto West Coast pop, because the drummer and the bass player and Lukather, I even had playing a couple of songs, they're on our album. So it's a Toto rhythm section, except it's me on guitar instead of Luke for the, all the solos and most of the record, and it's Foster on piano instead of Page. And I'm one of the singers, which I don't like that singer, me. I don't like the way my voice sounds. Funderburg sounds good. Tommy's the other singer, the high guy. Anyway, let's back up. So we're in the early 70s now, and I'm starting to get calls as the studio guitarist. By 72, 3, I was working 4 dates a day, man. I was working from 10 in the morning till 1 in the morning, 5 days a week, 20 sessions a week, and turning down 20. There was so much work. And a lot of it was Motown stuff, so a lot of it was really good musically for me. And also, David and I, when we arranged, we always arranged musically. Michael O'Marty, and another great piano player and arranger. And where was I going with this? So
I mean, at the stage where you come out of the late 60s, you're already getting involved and kind of playing a part in, essentially the evolution of music. So you kind of saying after the stage where you were involved and it was that sort of era, would you say that almost nothing good has happened since like about what, mid-80s or late 80s?
That's where it stopped. And I'll tell you how all that happened. But we've got to back up a little bit. I was also in a band. There's a clip that I've got to get my hands on. You know, I'm trying to get a movie funded for the studio musicians of the 70s, which would be what is now Yacht Rock, a lot of it. But it would also have a lot to do with R&B, have a lot to do with films that we played on. And Andreas Carlson, do you know who he is?
I know the name, but I'm not.
He grew up with Max Martin. He's written a lot of tunes with Max.
All right.
He's an excellent singer. And we just went out to dinner last night. 2 nights ago, his singing, he would have been a star, but he didn't want to. He did an album in Sweden as a solo artist, but he wanted to write. He didn't care about being the star. He would just prefer to write. So that's why him and Max got together and wrote a lot of hits. And they're doing a 90s movie on the stuff that those guys wrote, that Max and Andreas and the other cats wrote, and Simon Cowell's involved. And we're trying to get Simon interested in our 70s project. Of all of us studio musicians in the last golden era of the studio musician. It was like 72 or 3 to around 85.
Do you reckon he'll do it?
What's that?
Well, I hope Simon does it.
Well, let's hope so.
Fingers crossed.
You're not going to want to use this, but all these movies cost $1 million too. The song licensing, $750, $800,000. You know, all the still pictures, all the song licensing. It's going to be non-stop music. We're actually going to try to get a series of 4 episodes, an hour each.
That would be
I
awesome.
can't tell you more about it without you signing a non-disclosure, and we couldn't use it in the interview. Because there's a few things that are going to happen that are going to blow your mind if we can pull it off. But I'll tell you one really good thing that's going to happen. There's going to be humor about every 8 minutes of stories that you won't believe. I mean, we were in our 20s and we did some pretty ridiculous stuff, and we got away with it because we were first call players, and you'll love the stories. Anyway, okay, so all right, now we're in the studio moment here, and I'll do my don't forget to let me get my pitching in.
I will not.
As far as the E Roads, did we pitch the E Roads on the last interview? We got to do it again. We're also doing a DX7 series. We've got over 10,000 DX7 patches. And those, if you have a DX7, well, let's just talk about it right now. So the company that I did the E Rhodes samples with, along with George Mamalakis, for the famous E electric piano that was used about 15 feet from here, over and over, the best sounding Rhodes ever on songs like Mornin', Al Jarreau. It's all over Jarreau records. It's on so many records, it's unbelievable. And it was so hard, after we discovered this Rhodes, it was so hard to book the Rhodes. I'd have to book the Rhodes 2 months in advance. I had to book the Rhodes before I booked the musicians. That was something you don't hear every day, right? And then sadly came the DX7, and the DX7 with 2 of them detuned a little bit was the new Rhodes sound, and and it was actually good, and another sound, and it was fresher. And then that died away when our 80, by 85, 86, when pop music went away like it was in our era, that sound went away as well. But now we're bringing that back with Chris Poehler, this very good friend of mine, through Orange Tree Samples, owned by Greg Schlepfer, another very good friend of mine and a genius, both these guys. They decided to do this project, and I got involved because I have tons of DX7 patches. And we know a few other guys that had thousands upon thousands, and we've got them all. Now, if you own a DX7 and you didn't back up in the last 20 or 30 years, the battery's dead in the DX7, and those sounds are gone. So if you didn't back them up into a cartridge, they're toast forever. 2 of my DX7s still worked. So I got my sounds out of there, plus I have them on cartridges. And anyway, this is going to be a great tool. This will be available through Orange Tree Samples, and it's going to take over the pop music market. And the reason for that is the pop guys are always looking for new sounds. You know, they've run out of sounds. You can't keep making the same synthesizer over and over. So this goes back to FM synthesis, which was another sound altogether. And this is going to make a big splash. And everything cycles. Everything. If you look at what happened to our era of music in the ending in the late 80s, electric guitar went away. It went away. It's coming back again in pop.
Really?
I listen to pop radio. I make myself listen. I want to hear what's happening. Oh yeah, it's back.
What do you like anything that you hear on pop radio?
I like the guitar stuff. I'm also writing a book on rhythm guitar, and also a video is going to come along with it where I play 1,000 rhythm guitar parts. No more, no less. I'm working with my PA, Kirsten, who's Cheriston actually, who's brilliant. Both of her kids are excellent musicians. And I didn't want to learn Sibelius and these copying programs, so I'm working with them. But that led me to do a book on keyboards with Stefan and a book on drums with Pepe, who are Kirsten's 2 sons. And anyway, the guitar book with 1,000 rhythm guitar patterns. You're never going to run out of patterns. It's like a dictionary. You keep this thing with you. If you can read, you've got it written out. If you don't, just record all your favorite audios of the parts I'm going to play to your iPhone. And then when you can't come up with a part and a record date, just go through all these and you'll eventually find one that'll work. I really like this angle, man.
So are they not going to be, they're not like rhythm guitar parts from a song?
No.
They're just like ideas?
Well, no, some of them are rhythm guitar parts that I've played.
On tunes.
I can steal for myself.
Yeah, of course you can. But we've actually got sidetracked because you were telling me how music died.
Yeah, don't let me get sidetracked, man, because I have a tendency to do that. Okay, so let's finish up the Rhodes thing. That's done. The guitar book. Other than the 1,000 rhythm guitar parts, there's all kinds of other stuff. And the keyboard book and the drum book will follow, and they'll all relate. And, of course, we have to do bass with it. I'll figure out maybe Freddie Washington or Nate East will want to do it. Then I'm doing an autobiography, video that'll be in book form, too. I'm going to do that next. But the very next thing I'm doing is I'm finishing mixing the next Jar record, finally. That's going to take place over the next 2 weeks. I'm doing stems, and I'm going to give them to Randy Goodrum because I just don't have the patience to mix right now. Too many projects. Because then my YouTube channel, which we'll talk about as we go. It's going to be a very good educational channel, mostly on technical engineering from the home studio guy through the pro. I've come up with tons of ideas over the years. And as I told you, physics plays such a big part. We'll get into that later. All right, so Stevie Wonder, Music of My Mind, 1971. I heard that album and I said, wait a minute. This cat is a jazzer. 1971. I move out of my mom's house. She wanted rent. Second she wanted rent. See ya, Mom. So I had just bought the Stevie Wonder Music of My Mind album, and I just bought a great new Macintosh stereo for this new pad I was moving into. Believe it or not, man, I was renting a 4-bedroom house for $200 a month in 1971. 1 bath, but 4 bedrooms.
In LA?
Yeah, and I had a studio in 1 room, and then the living room was the playing room, and I had the 4-track that's still in the control room, and I was recording always. So, and I've got tons of jam tapes from that era. I've got to have them baked. What was that?
Better times to buy somewhere or rent somewhere in LA, for sure.
Oh, yeah. It was, my friends would, I'd engineer for my friends and book the studio for $15 an hour for them. It was affordable. Everything was affordable then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had the Stevie Wonder album, and I played it for all my friends. And the very first song on the album is the Superwoman medley. And it's just loaded with delicious chord changes. Just loaded. And I just couldn't believe it. And the whole album, man, I'm just going, this is the best shit I've ever heard. And as far as male singers goes, Stevie Wonder is my favorite male singer ever. And one of my favorite songwriters of all time. And the next 10 albums were all masterpieces. Just floored me. So that's when I decided if Stevie can get away with using jazz chord changes in pop songs, why can't I? And then David Foster and I, shortly thereafter, met each other when I was working a club gig in Hollywood, and we became best of friends. When I met him, he called me to play in a record date for a group called Skylark that he was in. And I also told him, I said, I program synthesizers. I've got a ARP 2600, and I'm an electronic guy. So I said, he says, bring it. So I want you to, I hired me to play guitar and program the synth. So after the first playback of the song, I said, who's the piano player? He said, I am. I said, you and I are going to become very good friends. And for the next 20 years, that was the case. Until we both went off our way producing, and we didn't see each other much during those eras because we were both off doing what we were doing, producing different acts. So, different artists. So, that Stevie record changed me, and it got me to get David into the jazz changes. He listened to Oscar Peterson a lot when he was a kid, who was one hell of a jazz piano player, one of the best ever. But he didn't allow that to creep into his pop playing until I opened him up to, come on, man, let's stretch out here. And we did.
Was he classically trained?
Yeah, but you know what? David's a freak. Not only does he have perfect pitch, he told me something the other day that I never realized. He says, I never practiced. I said, you got to be kidding me, man. He said, no. I said, your time is so good, or it was. We're both old now and suffering from old man not playing often. And, as things get older, your brain and hands don't work together quite as well. You have to practice 2 hours a day just to keep what you had. You're not growing anymore musically. You peaked. This is the way it goes. But anyway, David said he never practiced. I couldn't believe it.
So good.
Fluke, natural.
Do you think? Yeah.
Everything he hears, he could play in his groove. I don't know how his groove was so good if he wasn't playing a lot. I used to try to get him to play club gigs with me, and he wouldn't do it because there were always jazz club gigs between the singers' show. We had 3 jazz sets and played jazz for fun. He says, I'm not a jazz player. And I said, David, listen to your solo on Morning. Is that not a jazz solo? You are a jazz player, whether you know it or not. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm surprised you would say that.
Right. So now, we're coming to the end of the 70s. And David and I get a record deal by accident. David and I were on a record date for a chick named Maureen McGovern, who was a great singer. Really nice lady. And on the break, David started playing changes to, just playing some nice, pretty changes in a ballad style. And I went over the piano and came up with a melody. And that song ended up Should We Carry On, which is a song in the Airplay album. Well, we went back to my studio, which is the one before this one, after the session, and we demoed the song up. And next day we added drums and bass. And I sang the thing, even though I don't really like my singing. And David gave it to, who was the guy that was Hall & Oates' manager that was also the president of Columbia Records for a long time? Tommy Mottola.
Yeah.
Okay. So David gave the song to Tommy Mottola, and Tommy said, you guys are a band. Out of nowhere, we got a record deal. Okay, we were starting to produce right then. We were still doing record dates, and we were artists. Well, I blew us as an artist. I blew it for us. I didn't want to travel. I just didn't want to travel. And in Japan, man, we were these huge stars. And that record still sells well there, and pockets of Europe.
What is that record? Airplay.
Airplay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very it's a very kind of cult record, like
It was
all over the world.
Yes. It was the first, like I say in Japan, a guy named Toshi Nakata, who is still the king of the West Coast pop reviewers and article writers and book writers. He said we were the first West Coast pop band to him. But like I say, that's not true. You have to add Toto, you have to add Blood, Sweat, and Tears, you have to add Chicago, you have to add Dun 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 Dun, If Here's the Road. David Pack, what was the name of the band? Dun 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 Dun. Dun, dun. I can't remember the melody other than the first 2-3 notes. David Pack, and the band was Ambrosia.
Oh yeah! Oh bloody hell! Yeah, you're singing "Biggest Part of Me."
That's it. One of the cats in that band was in Airplay for a minute when we played a track on the St. Elmo's Fire album, because David was writing the music for the whole movie, and so I can't remember his name. Why am I forgetting? But the drummer in the band is a guy named John Friesen. And I used to play, when I was in college, I used to play all the Holiday on Ice, Ice Follies. They'd come to town for 2 weeks. This is when I was in college. And I'd work 6 nighters and 2 shows on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. That was like 7.5 hours of music, of playing circuit music. Boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick. Occasional rock and roll thing, the occasional song in any style. And John Friesen was the drummer on this band. And he quit doing the Ice Follies to be in a band. And I said, you had a steady gig. Are you sure you want to do this? Because he would travel all year. And so would Bobby McFerrin. Bobby McFerrin was one of those guys on one of those shows. 2 years of nonstop traveling, playing that circus music every night. It was a good band, always a good band. Anyway, John Friesen quit the Holiday Ice gig, or the Ice Follies. Bam! He's in a band that's like a million-selling band.
Yeah.
Shortly last, sadly.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these acts from Yacht Rock have become cult now, but there must have been a stage where it's like a huge album and then suddenly nothing.
Exactly.
And like lots of years of people never having heard of it.
Right.
When did you notice this sort of like Yacht Rock research, like people getting an interest, for example, in like the Airplay record? Has that stayed pretty consistent, for example, in Japan?
And Europe, and pockets of Europe. Scandinavia for sure.
Yeah.
Mostly Sweden and Norway. You know a guy in Norway named Ole? God, what's his last name? He's such a great singer. He just did a tribute album for the band Pages.
Oh yeah, they're another.
I produced one of those records,
wow.
And some of those songs are on the tribute album he just did. He's a great singer. Why can't I remember his last name? Makes great records, and R&B-ish too sometimes. Anyway, so let's see, to get the flow going.
So you were making that album in the late 70s. You'd been inspired by Stevie
79.
Wonder.
Yes.
Before that.
Oh, big time. So the songs I was writing, man, I was using jazz changes in pop songs, and I got a lot of cuts, and so did David. It was really easy for us to get songs placed because, like, for example, I was doing an album with Corey Wells, and Corey Wells was in Three Dog Night. And Three Dog Night broke up, so he went to be a solo artist. They all went on their own, and he recorded 2 of my songs. And no hit, sadly. Maureen McGovern recorded 2. No hit. Bunch of other artists, really good artists. No hits. But I was getting songs placed right and left. They just weren't artists that were successful, and they all were talented. You just never know.
No, you never know.
You never know. So,
but with Stevie Wonder, after Stevie Wonder, what was the next thing that you heard that was like, this is new? Other than stuff that you were involved with.
I was going to say, I was trying to figure out how to say
you
this.
played obviously on a lot of stuff after Stevie Wonder comes along, you know, because you were playing on a lot of records, and for people who might think that that's a ridiculous claim, I've got a list here that I just want to pick out random things and just ask you what.
Absolutely.
It was like.
Did you get the whole list from off the website?
I probably don't even have the full list here. I've just got the Wikipedia list, which will be a tiny little version. So I'll pull up the version from the website. I think that'll be better.
If you want to go through the whole website, man, you got to plan for a couple of hours. Cherston actually is the proper pronunciation. She knows more about me than me, and so does Toshi Nakata in Japan. And so she's found tunes. Stuff still comes out of the woodwork. You know, did you know you played in this? I go, I don't have any recollection.
How many credits do you think you've got?
I think I figured it out one time. Was it 6,000?
Bloody hell! So you're literally one of the most.
Yes.
One of the people who's worked on the most sessions in the history.
And I did it in a shorter period of time than anybody, because I really was working 20 dates a day. And Dean Parks at that time was taking a break for most of it. So between me and Lee Rittenauer and I got Luke in near the end, but it was just me and Lee Rittenauer and Ray Parker, best rhythm guitar player ever.
What about Leland Sklar?
Sklar played bass on a lot of those dates, a lot of the pop stuff. But he would go out on the road a lot. He was with James Taylor. He could come in and out because he was such an in-demand player, and he's still working. Dean Parks was the most recorded guitarist in the studio of anyone. Tedesco before him, Tommy Tedesco, who was from the 50s and 60s, he was the godfather.
And his son,
Denny did the movie.
Did the movie, yeah.
On Tommy as like a home movie that turned into a film.
Yeah,
you know,
it was good.
There's good information in there. I know so many Tommy stories, and when we do the 70s movie, Tommy made it into the 70s because he was doing TV and film, and there's tons of unbelievable funny stories and great stories. He watched over us when we were young and did stupid things on record dates. For example, I'm on this film date with Tommy. It was a Barbra Streisand orchestra date, and I had chords on this one song, only a rhythm part. It's easy reading, nothing for me. You know, like the easiest of the easiest, reading the chord chart. Tommy had lines written out, and I had a C7 chord written out. But the orchestra, 80-piece orchestra, the voicing was C major 7. So I raised my hand to the leader. I said, I forgot who it was. In bar such and such, I've got C dominant 7, but the orchestra voicing C major 7. I said, you want me to play C major 7? He says, yes. Well, the second I did that, Tommy grabs my arm and he says, don't ever do that again. I said, what do you mean by that? He says, don't hit your dig me button, that you've got great ears. Everybody has great ears. Change your part and keep your mouth shut. You just wasted 30 seconds for 80 musicians, and if this date goes into overtime by 30 seconds, you are responsible for that, not financially. And I said, Tommy, you're right, man. He teaches little stuff like that all the time. Yeah. If some guys were freaked out about the part they were going to play, he would bet them $5 you're going to stiff. You're not going to make it. He'd try to psych them out. I got $5 that you're going to get through it. And then Tommy would dick with them just before the parts come up. You're never going to make it, man. I mean, it's just... We were playing with the LA Philharmonic at the Hollywood Bowl for George Martin. Tommy and I were the guitar players, and I was there to play Diamond Dust, the Jeff Beck song.
All right.
Diamond Dust is in 5/4, and the reason that I was hired to play it is I was in the Don Ellis band when I was a teenager, and Don Ellis band was a big band, and it was all odd time music. Nothing was in 4/4 except take 5, which was originally in 5/4. So everything was odd time, like let's say take 7/8, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, odd times like that. There's one song that was in 33 that was a Bulgarian folk song, and here's one bar 33. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. That alternated between 36. Anyway. But that was second nature to me. I could groove on that. So I'm the rock guy to get the rock feel under these odd times. Well, it's still a jazz kind of a thing. So I played Diamond Dust. They had the Diamond Dust for George Martin, and he was there because America was there, and the orchestra was going to do some songs that George had hired an orchestra for on the America album. You got all that?
Well, yeah, I mean, America he produced.
He produced. They were headlining the Hollywood Bowl. They needed an orchestra. They basically got the LA Phil, most of them. And the opening act was George Martin. So George Martin was playing songs he was involved in, like he produced Jeff Beck. So Jeff Beck wrote Diamond Dust, but George produced it. So I'm the guy that got the call because I'm the odd meter guy that everybody knew I can play in odd times and read in odd times. Okay, all that to get to a Tedesco story. I look over at Tommy. He's playing his Telecaster. And Tommy's like a non-technician, right? If something's broken, he just puts it down and picks up something else. Like one day, he was playing his Gibson 345, and he started getting the guitar hum. Well, it had to be a bad cable. He also had a 6-string Dano electric bass sitting there, and instead of troubleshooting the guitar hum, he put the 345 down, he picked up the Dano 6-string bass, and played everything up an octave for the whole day, and it just sounds horrible. I mean, you don't do that. That's Tommy. Well, I look over at his Telecaster on the George Martin gig with Diamond while we're going to play Diamond Dust right before we play it, and Tommy's E-string tuning peg is hanging on by about 2 turns of a screw. The thing's sticking up. The other screw is gone. It broke off, went away, who knows when. In about 10 minutes, this thing was going to pop off. And I looked at it and I grabbed Tommy's guitar and said, "Give me your guitar right now." Pull out my tools and fix it for him. He's just like, that's the way he is. One day we're on a Barbra Streisand date. And it's another 80-piece orchestra. And the day before was about 70 degrees out, and then came a real hot day in the summer. It was like 110. And he kept all of his guitars in the trunk of his car so he could drive into film lots and not have to park 2 miles away like we all did. We all had cartage, so all of our stuff was brought in. But Tommy didn't want to make the walk from the car. He didn't want to walk 2 miles. He's a big guy. He didn't want to exercise. So he kept all of his guitars in the trunk of his car, and he'd use the excuse, "I got to pull in to unload to do the movie." Then he'd leave his car there. Everybody knew it. He goes to the car to get the gut string, the nylon string, because that's what he played a lot in these sessions, and he sees it's on the part. Goes to the car, gets the nylon string. 70 degrees the day before, 110 today. Pulls the guitar out of the case. 3 strings are broken. On a nylon string guitar, if you break a string, it takes minimum 3 days before the pitch will settle.
Really, yeah.
So I went over to my cartridge drums and I got on my nylon string and I gave it to Tommy. This was typical. Something at Tommy's would break, I'd go get it for him and just, give him mine to use.
Well,
I don't know what he did when I wasn't
sounds
around.
Like you were more of the father figure to him than the other way around, judging by some of these stories. But that was called the Wrecking Crew.
Yes.
What's the name of the 70s guys?
The Wrecking Crew that wrecked the Wrecking Crew.
A better Wrecking Crew.
Now, here's the funny part about this. This is the most amazing part of all. The Wrecking Crew were all jazzers. Jazzers. Tedesco was an excellent jazzer. Carol Kay was an excellent jazzer. She was the bass player. But she's also an excellent jazz guitar player. Hal Blaine was a jazzer.
Really?
All the piano players from Don Randy, Michelle Rubini, all these cats, they were all Joe Sample. Joe was mostly our era. All these cats were jazzers, and when they got put into this rock and roll situation, they thought this music was stupid, but they were getting really paid good money to do it, and Tommy used to tell me, "I'm just playing my dumb rock and roll stuff, That's all I did." And I said, "But do you have any idea? You set a style. During the surf days, you're on those Beach Boy records playing all these solos. And, on all these records, you set a style. You
They're
changed
great
everything in
records.
surf. I'm listening to the surf thing when I'm 14, and I'm learning all these tunes. And I said, you don't realize how big of an influence you had on all of us.
Yeah.
That he thought it was garbage, junk, but he was glad to do it. Then he took it a little bit more seriously, but he wasn't like the guys like us that were working the clubs playing the current music all the time. And he wasn't playing R&B funk. And I'm in the black clubs playing funk. I'm in the Latin clubs playing Latin. I've got it all covered. The same with Rittenauer. The same with Dean. All of us, And we were all jazzers too, but not jazzers to the sense that they were jazzers. Those guys were really jazzers. But they couldn't relate to what we were doing in the 70s because their groove of the rock and roll was that simplistic thing, and they never grew. They didn't grow into what we were.
You guys combined more sophisticated stuff with the rock.
Right. So those guys would have been much more happy doing what we did, but that was their era and that was their work. They also did a lot of film and TV, which they were really suited for as well because they were great readers. Tedesco was unbelievable. He also had a photographic memory, so all he had to do was see it once. I didn't find that out until 2 years ago when I was talking to one of our studio guitar player buddies, Mitch Holder, who was working. He was doing mostly movies while I was doing the records. Anyway.
And from the era where you're involved in all these records, has anything new happened since? What was the last time, what was the last thing before it kind of went to shit?
I'd say by 85, it was dwindling down. Here rap started to come along, and then CDs, and then free music, and then Napster, and all these budgets are going down the drain, and everybody starts using machines only, and nobody saw the writing on the wall. But I had moved on to production as a producer, so it didn't matter to me. And I also told a lot of the guys in the late 70s, right when I was getting out and going into producing, I said, there's going to be another group of cats like us that's going to come along. There's going to be a new sound. It's going to happen at some point. At some point, it's got to happen. We're going to dwindle out, and if you're not a good reader and you can move on to TV and film, it's over. Well, I didn't see the other writing, which was the machines. So, to me, man, by the late 80s, it was really done. Unless you can think of tunes that were still musical, that were coming out, that were hits.
Nothing new came along.
No, it
That's
wasn't.
For sure.
It wasn't. Whatever David Foster was doing was always good. Like Chicago or whatever he was doing always had musicality. But there was nothing.
I find a lot of that stuff that he was involved with in the 90s, like the Celine Dion stuff.
Right.
Like, that's not really... I can see that it's brilliantly produced. That's not really for me, to be honest. But, it is amazingly written and produced and stuff. But that's just a bit... I don't know.
It doesn't have the fire we had.
No, not
when
at
we
all.
were doing those. We were on fire. David made the movie, had to reinvent himself. So he went to the power ballads, and the Whitney big, huge hit, that was in the movie The Bodyguard. And then
I Will Always Love You.
Yeah.
The Dolly Parton.
Yeah, Dolly Parton song.
Yeah.
Then he reinvented himself again when all that was over by finding Michael Bublé and finding Josh Groban. He kept reinventing himself.
Yeah, and he's, it's
brilliant at anything he does.
Amazing production and stuff.
Oh, it's incredible. David's brilliant at anything he does.
But, and again with Michael Bublé, it's great, but it's not like the Earth, Wind and Fire thing, or
no,
it's not. It's not like the creme de la creme of music, which is After the Love Is Gone is that.
29 takes.
Really?
There's 3 versions of that song, by the way.
Yeah. We last time we listened, and also I know just from my own fandom, there's the Earth, Wind and Fire, there's your version, and then there's Bill Champlin version, right?
That Bill Champlin version is my version, too.
Yeah.
2 versions of my version, one with David and Airplay.
Well, all of them are your versions.
I didn't play on the Earth, Wind & Fire
Did
version.
you not?
No. And the guitar part that they had on the record, they buried, but the leakage still comes through.
Yeah, the guitar's not too prominent on the Earth, Wind & Fire one.
No, it's not at all, because they took it out. And it wasn't Al McKay, and it should have been. Now, Al McKay was the guitar player in Earth, Wind & Fire.
Amazing guitarist, right?
I grew up with Al McKay. When I was in college, I used to play demo dates. There was a trombone player in the band named Ray Jackson who was a great arranger and a great trombone player. He was in the Watts 103rd Street Band a few years after college, but he was doing R&B demo dates. This was my early R&B experience in the studio. And Al McKay was a drummer then, but he was also practicing guitar. So about 6 months after I met Al, he's now on the dates with me. It was 2 guitars, him and I, and he was a guitar player. And I said, Al, man. Well, I was a drummer first too, but he had just started. And I said, man, you play great, man. And I got to tell you, I love the way he plays guitar in those Earth, Wind & Fire records.
Well, yeah, the guitar is one of the
Master.
crucial things.
He's a master rhythm guitar player.
Without rhythm guitar, the records don't groove.
No, they wouldn't.
And those records groove
Big time.
like almost no other. I mean,
It
they're a super
grooves.
interesting band.
And it's musical.
Yeah, this got brought up earlier. What I want to kind of hone in on it is the issue of autotune. So
Okay.
you had something to say on this subject.
Okay. Every singer in the 30s up till 1960 or 70, and maybe even a little farther, every female singer and every male singer sung in tune on every movie they did. Now, it was obvious if somebody overdubbed them. If they were just lip syncing and it was a, ghosted singer. By the way, I ghosted on a Cheap Trick record. I played the guitar solo on a Cheap Trick record and had to teach Richie Nielsen the solo. That's a whole other story. Yeah. Did I ghost on any others? I can't remember. Anyway, all these singers in all these movies sang in tune, all of them. And I've got a ton of this stuff because I'm a film noir junkie, which is basically early 1940s through the mid-50s. There's about 400 films, and I've got most every one. Anyway, all the singers, unbelievable, okay? Then comes the pop schlock of the 50s, and especially the 60s with like the Doors. I don't want to use them as a bad example, because I know Robbie Krieger, and he's a good guy. Okay, and the keyboard thing on Light My Fire, brilliant. It is about the singer. If I don't like the singer, it doesn't go any farther for me, But anyway, they all sang in tune, these singers. Then nobody else. From the 60s on, very few singers. Stevie, a lot of the black chick singers sing in tune. But for the white guys, there wasn't any of these standouts. Like it just wasn't that good a pitch. Then came autotune. What, 20 years ago now? 15, 20?
Yeah, well, there was a stage where it was being used really like...
That was like robotic. That was stupid.
The Cher stuff.
Yeah, that was
like there were a few other records like that.
Right.
Okay.
By the way, Cher's a great chick. Played in a bunch of her stuff, and she's fun to hang out with. She's one of the guys.
Also, the record where they used that effect, Believe.
Right, it was the first hit like that.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good like, it might just be a bit of like a throwaway pop record, but it's a good like throwaway dance, like whatever you want to call it.
It is. It's not bad.
And she's got like better stuff from earlier in her.
Of course.
And like I don't know, she's like reinventing herself with it. Whatever.
Okay, and it was the producer's idea. I'm sure she probably said, "What's that shit?"
Yeah. I mean, it's naff as fuck, but like at the end of the day, it's it's not responsible for what you're about to reveal.
Okay, so when I got a hold of it, I learned how to use it tastefully to make it not like I'm tuning somebody. I'd make sure all the ramps were done humanly, and I wouldn't like smash it to being totally in tune on a long note. I'd let it have its humanness. And then along came Melodyne, and I really had good control. And then Melodyne's an incredible program. But anyway, what I'm saying is, with all of these vocals being overtuned for the past 20 years, you hear all these young singers come up on these TV shows, these female singers and male singers, but especially female singers that have excellent pitch, because that's what they grew up hearing. It was the best thing that could have happened to them.
So what? Has it improved the singing?
It improved the quality of singing of young singers growing up. I figured this out about 10 years ago. And I just said, I hear them on American Idol and these other shows, and I go, man, why is their intonation so good? And I started thinking about it, and I figured, unless they're a freak, they grew up in a very musical environment with a very musical family, you know. So that's it. It changed the way people perceived of pitch. They weren't listening to out-of-tune singers. They were listening to in-tune singers because they couldn't help it. Because everything was tuned.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, right.
So is that good or bad?
Good. It's good that they sing in tune. They don't need the help. You know, they hardly need the help. I've just heard so many of them that are just so much better than they were the previous 20 years.
So you think the quality of the singing's gone up?
Absolutely.
So
They'll
why
still
is the
tune
quality?
everybody.
Why has the quality of the music gone down?
Okay, here we go. Imagine a guy buying an iPad, and he's got a little recording program in it, even if it's GarageBand, with an external keyboard. He buys superior keyboard, superior drummer, superior bass, and all he's got to do is click on a square, and that square will command the drum groove, the bass part, and the chords, right, to some standard type progression. And then the guy goes, hey man, listen to the tune I just wrote. Didn't even have a melody yet. All he did was hit a button, you know. So I hate to say it, man, but we're not opening the door for the quality musician. How does the quality musician get in there? You know, in rap music, man, no offense to it, every generation's got their music, but it's like Ray Charles said, there's nothing I can learn from it. And it's just, musically, nobody's home.
Yeah. I mean,
Nothing's happening. I'm sorry. I mean, okay, there's a beat and there's a lyric and people like it. I understand it's their generation. But where's the music? And then the other people that are making the dance record, the same people are hitting those buttons and coming up with automatic things, and you know, and there's just a few. The few that are around are doing an okay job. I don't know their names, man. I don't pay attention, but I make myself listen to pop radio, and I have heard some things where I've gone, okay, there's music. There's somebody involved that's musical.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that about the singing. What about the playing? Do you think that there are good like musicians and players these days because of the technology?
They'll loop a part, like let's say the guitar part. And if I hone in on the guitar part, a lot of times, unless it's okay, the guitar player in the band, who's the what's the name of the band that where the singer was on one of those voice shows? Adam
Lambert, Queen.
No, Adam
Lambert. No.
Adam. What's the band?
Queen. Adam Lambert sings.
No, different guy. It's not Adam then. If it's not Adam, it's something else. Who's the band that's had 1 million hits?
One Direction.
No, they sing okay. I think their pitch is pretty good. They were handpicked by Simon. And Simon, even though he's not really a musician, he's got an ear for pitch. He does. The guy was on the show on Channel 4 and NBC here on that America's Got Talent. And he's got a band. And the band keeps pulling hits year after year after year, man. They've made a lot of money. Well, I can't remember it. Anyway, the guitar player in the band I gave a lesson to about 20 years ago, and his name's James Valentine, and he's a very good guitar player. And he plays a muted part on this one song that goes through the tune. And I played him. I haven't heard the albums; I just hear the singles. So when it's not just totally dance and they basically dump him out of the mix, he's good, and he's the kind of people we need. If I didn't know who that was when I would have heard the song, I would have looked it up to find out who it was, because it was a fairly easy part. It's an easy part, but it's played perfectly, immaculate. Feels good.
But would you say that in general the playing's not actually any better? It's the singing.
There's a few guys left over from the old days, like Paul Jackson is one of like a brother to me. And when Ray Parker and I were doing record dates, Paul came along later. But Ray and I were inseparable for about 5 years and played on R&B dates. Greatest rhythm guitar player ever. And I'm the white version of him. But between us, one of us would play a muted single note or double stop part, and the other guy play rhythm. And the guy that was left over after us was Paul Jackson. So he covered that whenever it needed to happen. And in R&B, there is still some of that. But there's no R&B radio station anymore as far as I know. But Paul's working, so I don't know if he's... I got to ask him what kind of stuff he's playing.
Yeah. I mean, so, because music's gone to shit is the overriding point.
That's it.
And that was... Because I feel that way, because, you know, I like you, I listen to the new stuff that comes on the radio, and I'm obsessed with the old stuff. I've got to be to know, like, what I know about the 70s stuff.
Of course.
And you know,
or you wouldn't be here.
Yeah. lots of, and so many people are, like, who didn't grow up at that time, because the music is so good. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to frame this podcast around it is, how do you think we can get back to better music being on the radio and like, try and recapture what pop music had? Because a lot of people say to me, oh, you're so miserable with your attitude of, oh, it's all shit now and it was way better back then. But that is what I honestly believe. So how can we change the situation?
Every era says that, but they've only been right twice. Early 60s came off from a 30-year run of jazz and quality pop, and there was a big downfall. Then it went back up. And then in around 1990 for sure, it went back into the downfall. Okay, how can this get back together? One thing needs to happen. Free music has to stop. And I don't think it can happen. I think Spotify's too powerful. Spotify just rammed it up all our bungholes, man. And they're up there twisting and turning it. And just when I think it's over, yeah, little punch action there on the old prostate. So Spotify destroyed it. That was the last thing that went wrong.
Coffin, really.
And they bring up lawsuits against raising royalties all the time. You know, what do I get a play? 0.00063 cents. You know, there's no way. This is a joke. It's an absolute joke, and they're making a fortune. So there's no budgets. What record company is going to give you a budget when they're not making money selling product? Now, the record companies are getting paid off by Spotify well. I know there's been backdoor deals made, because why they wouldn't exist if there wasn't. How many downloads get sold? Not much. You know, you need budgets to make records with good players. And you got guys all over the world that'll undercut you. You know, you find a guy that's a good guitar player for $50 and they're going to hire the guy, you know, when they're trying to make a musical record. But then all that stuff goes by the wayside because there's no promotional money, which is the second issue. Free music's got to stop. Record companies have to be able to make money on a product that you can put in your hand. You don't have to put it in your hand if you don't want to, but if you can put the artwork in your hand and look at it, you know, people will study it. You'll get more attached to it. That and promotion. So free music stops. You have to pay for it. And not $15 for an album anymore. let's take inflation into account, not what's happening right now. $30 for an album. Come on, man. Let's support these artists. The only way these artists can make money, the handful of them that are successful, is on the road. Right?
But do you think so? And I know it's
budgets go back up, put the union back in the game with union musicians, have all the top guys fight it out and become the most in-demand players, not, physically fight it out. Everybody knows who the great players are when they all show up, and you've got these guys playing on records. They'll be discovered. They'll be found by the artists that are doing the dates. And since they're all over YouTube anyway, you're going to find them. But bring back in paying musicians a fair wage. The musicians
isn't that only going to be on a niche scene now?
Huh?
That's only ever going to be on a niche scene, on a scene for real fans, real kind of dedicated music people who'll pay $30 for an album. Because I was going to ask, to what extent does the blame lie with the consumer? Because people treat songs as just disposable. People almost consider them to have about the same level of worth as a social media post or something like that, which is...
You're right, and it's
tragic.
they're designed that way. They want familiarity. They want your brain to already be familiar with something, not have to get used to something else. That's why they're always trying to work on promoting records and testing records that they test to make sure it gets those endorphins going of familiarity already. It's not like they want it to change. These are the Spotify people more than anybody, I bet. Okay. Albums were $15 in 1960, or maybe 1970. They should be 30 now. If the price of things went as they would have been, it should have been 30 now, right? But now that Spotify's around, we know that's not going to happen. So in order to make good music happen, you want good budgets to pay everybody fairly, because musicians are now just a joke. They're nothing. You can't make a living as a musician, hardly. Hardly anyone can. So that with promo, and you get back to quality music. And let's take some chances. Push this good music. It would take one really great act like another Beatles to come along to start it, and then others to follow and just get musically better. But it would take one act like that to come along probably to start it. And what am I saying all this for anyway, man? Free music's here to stay. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So what can we do? What can people who appreciate music do? And what can people who make music do, in your opinion, to try and make the situation better?
Make them listen to the music of the 70s through the mid-80s. Make them listen to all the musical stuff that was hits. Make them listen to it. Make them learn from it. And tell them to shape that in the way that works for them now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I agree completely, because otherwise I wouldn't be so passionate about it. And the reason why I'm so passionate is because I've heard all that stuff. For people who are listening to this who maybe aren't so obsessed with all this and aren't familiar with those records, off the top of your head, what are 3 songs that you've either written or played on or been involved with that you would say for a casual listener to this would be a good place to start?
Okay, let's take Peg. Here's a song that has 2 bonuses to listen to it for. It's musical, but it's still a blues, but it's a blues with very odd blues chords. It's from C major 7 to B2 over G2 over B, and that pattern repeats itself and then goes up a fourth, and then goes up another whole step and comes back just like a blues. So 1, 4, 5. But the 3 chords are involved in each of the 1, 4, 5 pattern. Instead of staying on the 1 chord for 4 bars, you have this pattern. I'm explaining it wrong. Okay, it's melodically easy to digest, but it's a hip song with a hip melody and hip lyrics. And the guitar solo I played on it is musical and different, unlike any other solo. Okay, I lucked into this. This should open a door. Does any of that melodically affect you as a musician to want to do something like that and take it to the next level? So any of the good Steely stuff from the Royal Scam album, through Gaucho or one after. All that stuff's great. I gotta say, all the Giro stuff I did, man, if that could influence people, that's a game changer. After the Love Has Gone, try to write a ballad that's that beautiful, right? Turn Your Love Around's the simplest thing I ever wrote that was a hit. But it's still got some tricky stuff in it, you know.
It's still just a song. It's a record that you put on once, you'll enjoy it
Right.
straight away. But it's actually, there's a lot going on there.
That's right.
So that's kind of...
Steely Dan, Stevie Wonder, anything of Stevie Wonder's for about that 10 album run. From Music My Mind on for like the next 12 or 13 years. All the albums after that, they all still have some good quality to them. There's some good tunes on them. And not everyone's a gem like they are in the earlier ones. Every song's a gem. Okay, Ambrosia, Biggest Part of Me. We were talking about that. Listen to something like that. You know, this is all block chords that's used in that song. But they're very melodic, rich, thick chords. And with a beautiful melody over the top.
And a great, groove.
Yes.
It's got all the elements.
All the elements. All the elements.
But now you're saying, the singing is better. And I've heard other people come in this podcast and say the playing's better because there are all these YouTube channels. So what is it?
Oh,
Is it the songwriting that's worse and the arrangement that's worse?
What do you mean by the YouTube channels? There's YouTube channels of guys.
You know, a lot of people have chops now, apparently.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
they've all they picked them all up off. They've practiced 15 hours a day, and
But these guys, when you go like this from the get-go,
they have no taste.
Well, you're not building a solo. A solo is telling a story. Like if I told you a story, it would be in 3 parts. There's an intro to it, the setup. There's the middle part of the story, and then it all climaxes at the end. Music is just like that. A solo needs to be built like that. There's a beginning, a middle part, and an end. And playing fast early on from the get-go, you're at the end. So all these guys with all these amazing chops, it's like if a guy had a dick that's 18 inches long, what good is it going to do? He's going to show his friends, and that's it. I always wanted to use that line. It doesn't serve any practical purpose. Every woman's going to run away, you know. And that's
very true.
Yeah, so these guys, I have a real good friend that's one of those guys, but he's learned to be tasty. His name's Matteo Mancuso. He's an excellent player. I'm going to produce an album with the man. I don't expect we're going to make a lot of money, but if he hits the road, he could end up being a Pat Metheny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's that good. He's very good. He plays guitar with 2 fingers, like it's a bass player.
That's
Matteo Mancuso. Write it down.
Very unusual.
Hey, Matteo, I hope you're watching this. You too, Dad. His dad used to be a studio guitar player, and the first time we FaceTime, when they pick up on their end, he's got the Airplay covering the whole camera. And I go, well, now I know why it was so easy to get a hold of you, Matteo. Your dad must be a studio player. And he said, yep, he is. His dad played in the studios for years. Go to my website and you check out my discography. If you're into musical music, I mean, all the records I produced, man, from Steve Kipner, Mark Jordan, that album got nominated it came in first place in the least successful best guitar album category. But I wasn't the artist, Mark was. I'm just playing solos on every tune.
Well, it's pretty important.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Mark's album. It's not even, that was pretty funny. So Steve Kipner, Mark Jordan, all the Giro albums, the 5 Giro albums I made, Manhattan Transfer, Twilight Tone, Twilight Zone. By the way, we got a cover with Jack White using part of the Twilight Tone song. So when I was producing and the studio musician, I'm the arranger, unless it's David on sessions. This song's 6 minutes long. I wrote this with Alan Paul, and it's based on the Twilight Zone theme, but it's that only has to do with the intro. From then on, it's no longer the Twilight Zone theme. And as you can see, I get pretty complete where I write out the parts. And the roadmap, if you're not a reader, obviously none of this is going to make sense. Where's the DS? Okay, so you play through the tune all the way down here. There's a couple of first and second endings. And what that means is this section would repeat right here to the first ending. And then you come back here and you play these 5 bars. Then you go to the second ending and you continue to play. So then we come up here, you're still playing. I see a repeat sign, so there's going to be a repeat. These 8 bars repeat. Play this once. You play it again, and the second time when you get to here, you take the second ending. And you keep playing. You keep playing, keep playing, keep playing. Then comes the solo section. This is one of the best solos I've played, I think. It's really difficult. You play these 5 bars through the first ending, so a total of 8. Go back to the D minor, play this through this bar, and come down to the second ending. Now you're over here, and you're playing all this, and there's no more repeats until we get here, and there's this muted guitar part. This thing repeats, so I put the repeats in. I forgot to put them in when I wrote it out, so that repeats, so that's a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, that's 16 bars. 18 bars, 20, 22, 24 bars of that. Then comes this other line. Then we take what's called the DS, a del segno. And that sign right there goes all the way back to here. And then you play through to the coda. And in this case, you're going to take the first ending, or I don't know, what does it say? DSL coda, that would have been with both endings. You play this, these 8 bars, and then you go back and catch the repeat. And after you come out of this bar, you play this 3 bars. Then you take the coda. And then the coda is right here. This is a quick lesson in learning how to read charts. And then that's a vamp. That fades out in the vamp. So with all these amount of bars, this song is 6 minutes long.
Jesus.
Yeah. And this is with a baby of mine, man. When we wrote this thing, I was digging what I was coming up with and the melody. And then Al wrote a great lyric for it. And there's jazz changes all over the place.
Is this the original?
Yeah, this is the original.
Amazing.
If you want to snap photos of each page, you're welcome to. There's jazz changes all over the place. This is a form of a 13th chord. A7, A minor 7, 11, A major 7, A flat major 7, 9, G sus, F minor 6, 9, E7 sharp 9, sharp 5, E7 sharp 5, E7 sharp 5, sharp 9. These are jazz chords, man.
Yeah, they're pretty complicated.
Right. And the way you fold these up in a music stand, this takes 2 music stands, this chart. But there's ways to fold them up on stands. Here's the original of Turn Your Love Around. See, we write everything out, man, because I don't want to leave anything up to chance. There are certain things that are left to be loose, but when they're intentionally not left to be loose, I want the ink played. So that's what I tell the guys. You know, play the ink, but when you get to section blah blah blah, you can be more rhythmical. Like in the bridge, I told the piano player, just play what you feel. If you don't come up with something great, I'll dictate a part or whatever. Yeah, man, these are all the originals. I kept them.
Well.
Huh?
Interesting chords as well on this one.
I guess there are a lot of hip chords in Turn Your Love Around. I forgot. Now let's get the one with a lot of chords.
They're in great condition.
Well, they put them in a pile, man, and saved them.
This is a
Another long one.
very good record.
This is.
Really a masterpiece of a...
And I wrote out most of David's piano part, and I wrote out my guitar part. But then David would just play what he wants. I don't know how much we're getting on the video of this stuff, but That's what he said. Pull on a little more. Okay, my part. Okay, hold on.
Hey, you want to go towards you?
That's what I'm right. That's what I'm doing. That's what I need. Okay, pull it tighter. So I got a little tighter. You can use the outtake for your mates. I put both of us on it because even though I wrote out his part, he played the part. So he arranged, and he also played the bass line on a synth, and I think we copied some of that.
Really? All right.
We did the very original version was done as an instrumental for a Japanese album he did.
It's a really great track.
It really is, man. This is one of my
A
favorites.
lot of jazz people really respect this.
Yeah, man.
So, bye.
And I'm going to get in depth of all these when I get into my video channel, my YouTube channel. Jeff Beccaro was a very good artist. He drew that in the back of the chart, and God eyes is a jazz phrase, meaning want to get high.
All right. That's, I mean, wow. What a piece of,
Trivia.
yeah, music history.
This episode of the Greatest Music of All Time podcast is brought to you by St. Aubin Retail and Distribution. St. Aubin Retail and Distribution is an independent retailer offering high-quality products direct to consumer at great prices, from home and furniture to clothing and accessories to electronics and entertainment. Whether you're looking for a new MacBook, a face mask, an Amazon Echo Assistant, a camera, or even a comfortable mattress for your bed, St. Aubin Retail and Distribution has got you covered, giving you excellent value for money and attentive customer service, no matter what you're looking for. Head to staubinretail.com to browse their range of amazing products.